Okay, good evening, everyone. First of all, my apologies for being a little lower energy and a little hoarse in my voice. I'm feeling under the weather today, but I should be able to get you a good little mini lecture here. So I'm going to talk today about intervals. Just a quick review on intervals, and then tomorrow I'm going to put up a quick review on triads. So intervals. What is an interval? I'll give you a second to think about that. An interval is the distance between two pitches, right? So the interval isn't those two pitches itself. It's a distance between two pitches. If we have two pitches like this, then the interval is the distance in between those two pitches, right? So you can do different things to an interval to make it bigger or smaller, right? So if these are my two pitches and say I put a flat on this pitch up here, that would make it go down a half step, right? That would make the interval smaller. Right, see how that works? Like the distance got smaller. My cat I do not know what she's doing, but whatever. Likewise, if you have an interval like this, the bottom note, make it sharp. It goes up, so your interval would get smaller that way too. Okay, so interval is the distance between two pitches, and we have two different parts of the name of an interval, right? We have the quantity and we have the quality. So the quantity is really easy. You're just counting up from the bottom note to the top. So let me do a few quantities for you. Here's good old Sibelius, and you can probably see I've got some of the stuff in the homework plugged in down here. Okay, whatever. 6/8 works for me. Not really worrying about meter here. Okay, so I made an interval like this. Let's get rid of that. No. No Q-signature. No. Okay, come on. There we go. Why is this? Just stop, civilians. I just want something simple. Okay. Okay. So we've got an F right here. We put a note on top of it like that. Okay, so we've got F is that bottom note. And then what's that top note? C, right? So you're just counting inclusively. So count the bottom note is 1 and then count up. So F, G, A, B, C. So that is a fifth. Okay? Or you just say 5. But that means fifth. Okay, so what would happen if I were to take this top note and move it up a step? And it's F2D. So F, G, A, B, C, D. So now this would be a sixth. Okay. So that is your quantity. So quantity and quality. Your quality is more exact. It's telling you precisely how many half steps are in your interval. So I'm going to show you something again. This is from your book. And this shows you how the qualities work for intervals. Okay. So you've got a few different qualities. You've got diminished, you've got minor, you've got major, you've got augmented, you've got perfect. You've got 5 different qualities. But not all intervals can be all those qualities, right? So there's 2 kinds of categories of intervals. I use the words I use, and if you want me to go over why I do this, bug me in class and I'll do my little overtone series little demonstration again. But I call these structural intervals and color intervals. So the structural intervals are unisons, like a note and itself, fourths, fifths, and octaves. And then your color intervals are everything else, seconds, thirds, sixths, and sevenths. So those two sets of intervals can be different qualities. So the unisons, fourths, fifths, and octaves, those can be perfect. And if you take a perfect interval, make it a step bigger, it's augmented. If you take a perfect interval, make it a half step smaller, it becomes diminished. All right, then your color intervals, they can't be perfect. So there's no such thing, or your structural intervals, or yeah, I said it right the first time. Your color intervals cannot be perfect, right? So there's no such thing as a perfect third. That's just a non-existent interval. So your color intervals can be diminished, minor, major, or augmented. Excuse me. So if you take a major interval, make it a half step smaller, it becomes minor. Make it even a half step smaller than that, it becomes diminished. Okay, so that's how all that works. So just memorize that. You need to know which intervals are the color intervals and which are the structural intervals, and you need to know those patterns of how they get bigger or smaller. So that's just something you need to commit to memory. Okay, cool. So in terms of figuring out a benchmark for which, we got this technique you can use where you treat the bottom note as the tonic of a major scale. So if I build a major scale, every one of those intervals above the tonic is going to be major if it's a color interval, or perfect if it is a structural interval. Let me show you what that would look like. Set it away. Okay. Yeah, okay, so over here maybe. So say we were doing interval, so we're doing intervals above D, right? So we're doing intervals above D. If I do all the intervals above D that are the notes in the D major scale, then the ones that are color intervals are going to be major. The ones that are structural intervals are going to be perfect. So that is a unison, just D to D. So that would be a perfect unison. All right, so I'm using the notes in the D major scale. So think about that for a second. What notes are in the D major scale? Okay, well, I know my keys. And if you don't know your keys, you need to learn your keys. Major scale, D major has two sharps. What are those two sharps? F sharp and C sharp. So that means every note is natural except F and C, which are both sharps. Okay? All right, well, this would be sharp, F sharp. See what I'm doing? I'm building intervals getting bigger over that bottom note. Okay, so now I just got to put these in. So all the color intervals are going to be major. All the structural intervals are going to be perfect. Okay. Major 7. And here we go. Okay. Let me do this with a different key. So we're building intervals above E flat instead of D. Okay, cool. So E flat, let's think about E flat major. So E flat major has how many sharps or flats? And I'm just giving you a sec to think about it. It has three flats, right? So those three flats are, and it's always the same order of flats, B flat, E flat, A flat. So, okay, F is natural, G is natural, A is flat. There we go. B is flat. Oops. I want a natural there, Sibelius. No, thank you. Okay. C is natural. D is natural. And E is flat. Cool. So all those are going to be major and perfect. Oops. And there you go. Perfect octave. Okay. So I hope you're seeing how that works. And then from there, you can adjust to figure out if it's a different interval. So let's do that. And let's do that by looking at our homework. So this is last week's homework. Um, and the first thing that they ask you to do, and I have this, so this is last week, so I'll show you it on the actual page so you can see that it's the same thing. But so the first thing they ask you to do in 10.6 is they ask you to find some melodic intervals. So you have a melody, you have Somewhere Over the Rainbow, right? And my voice is shot right now. It's gonna be terrible. Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, right? You've got a little melody, and you're asked to find some of the melodic intervals, the intervals from one note in the melody to the next. And I'm just for context, I'm just showing you where this is in the homework. Right, so 10.6. This is what I'm doing. What I have here is identical. I've just transcribed it into Sibelius. All right, so let's do it. So the notes with the brackets, the intervals with the brackets are the ones we want to figure out. So we've got A to B here. Okay. Maybe it would be a little easier since we've been looking at harmonic intervals. Let's write these out as a harmonic interval. Come on, Sibelius, what are you doing? What the heck? Oh, I'm accidentally taking screenshots over here. So I've got A here, and we've got B here. So there that is a harmonic interval, is the two notes on top of each other, whichever way is easier for you to read it, the same thing. So, I'm out of water. The easy part first is the quantity, right? So we just count up. So A, B, right? So this is going to be a second. Some kind of a second. So let's figure out what kind of second it is. Okay. So let's treat the bottom note, A, as the tonic of a major scale. A has how many sharps or flats? A major. 3 sharps, right? F sharp, C sharp, G sharp. Okay, so but B is not one of those, right? B is natural in A major. So A to B is the version of the second that you get in the major scale. So that makes it a major second. Okay. All right, let's do the next one. So they want C to the lower C. Okay, so I'm going to just write that over here as a harmonic interval. Right, just to make it easy for us. Well, this one's really easy, right? What do we call an interval that starts and ends on, the same pitch in different octaves? Well, I kind of spoiled it, right? It's an octave, right? So C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, right? 8 is an octave. Okay, so is this a perfect octave or is it diminished or augmented? Well, it's C natural to C natural, right? It's the same kind of C to the same kind of C, so that's a perfect octave. If it was like C sharp to C, like something like this, that would be an augmented octave, right? Or if it was something like this, like make the bottom one sharp, that'd be a diminished octave. Okay, but that's a perfect octave. All right, our last one, let's go C to A. Okay, cool. Well, our bottom note is C. That makes life a lot easier for us because C, when it's a major scale, has no sharps or flats. So if the top note has no sharps or flats, then it's major or perfect. Look at that. No sharps or flats. So let's figure out our quantity rather. C, D, E, F, G, A. Okay, it's a sixth. And then let's figure out our quality. So C to A, C major, it's natural, right? Every note's natural in C major. So that makes this the version that you find in the major scale. So that makes it a major sixth, right? Not a perfect sixth, because there's no such thing as a perfect sixth. But okay, so there you go. That's what you're doing over here. Okay, in 10.7, they're just asking you to write intervals above notes. So kind of doing the same thing in the opposite direction. So let's do a few of these. So you want to write a perfect fourth. So first, let's get our quantity correct, right? So we want it to be some kind of a fourth. So B, C, D, E. Okay, cool. So if we count up from D4, we get E. So it's going to be some kind of an E. I want to make it perfect. So, okay, perfect means it's the version that you're going to get in the major scale. So B flat has how many sharps or flats? 2. It's got B flat and E flat. So that means that that when you're building perfect intervals above that, you're going to want to use those notes, right? So everything natural except B and E. Oh, well, E is this note, right? So E should be flat, right? Because it's flat making signature. There you go. Perfect fourth. We did it. Congrats. Now, another thing you can do if you really despise my way of doing it using scales, you can just memorize the number of half steps. So here's the number of half steps for different intervals. Share screen. And this is in the book. Okay, so this is not something I made. You can just find this in the book yourself. But so you can just memorize the number of half steps for major and minor, right? So a major second is 2 half steps, a major third is 4, and so on and so on. I think it's faster to do it the scale way if you know your scales. And it's good to know your scales going forward if you want to learn more harmony and stuff like this. So I recommend you do it that way, but you can do it this way too if you want. Okay, cool. Maybe let's do one more of these intervals over here. So share screen. This fella. Okay. So minor second. Okay. So first of all, let's get our quantity. So a minor second, F, G. So our quantity is 2. We know it's going to be some kind of a G. Okay. So let's think about F major. So F major has how many sharps or flats? Got 1 flat, B flat, right? So that means that F to G is the version of a second you get in the major scale, right? But we don't want the version from the major scale, right? We want a minor second, not a major second. So we need to make it a half step smaller. So if you take a major interval, make it a half step smaller. How would I do that? So I want to take that note and lower it so that the interval is a half step smaller. Put a flat. Okay, beautiful. Now we have a minor second. Okay. So all right, that's what you're doing on those on your homework. Last thing, let's look at 2 more things. So I want to look at 1014, right? The chorale. I went over this in class. Go over it one more time. And then there is one sort of thing to do with intervals that we haven't talked about yet. So I want to talk about that really quick. Okay, so 1014, you're finding, I don't want to show this. Oh, wait, I guess I did have the right thing showed. Did I? I don't think so. This is where I want show. There we go. Okay. So, little Bach chorale, you're finding the harmonic intervals between the 2 different voices. But one of the things that makes this a little funky is that you have big intervals. They're larger than an octave. So those are called compound intervals. And I'll show you a kind of simple way of figuring them out. And really the easiest way is to remove the extra octave. So I'm going to look at, in particular, this first interval in the left hand that they haven't done yet. So if we go from the left, we get to that first left-hand interval that hasn't been done, that B to D. Okay, so I'm inputting that into Sibelius. Give me one sec. Clear that out, clear this out. We need a correct key signature. So our key signature is 3 sharps, right? Which is D major, or sorry, I meant to say A major. Wait, I got lost. Where did it go? Where are you? There we are. Okay. Now I'm putting in this interval. So and then do that as a separate voice. Voice 1. No. Come on. 1, 2. What are you doing? There we go. Okay. All right. So here's the interval that we're looking at. You've got B on the bottom, D on the top, but separated by an octave. So to find the quality, I like to start by finding it without the extra octave. And then all you got to do is add 7. So if you have a second with an extra octave in it, it becomes a ninth. So let's do this. So we've got B over here, and we've got E, right? Or sorry, D. See what I did? I just took out that extra octave and moved this D down an octave. So let's figure out the quality and quantity for this, because the quality is going to be exactly the same. Okay, so the quantity is B, C, D. It's 3, so it's going to be some kind of third. Okay, and then let's find the quality. Okay, so we're thinking about a B major scale. A B major scale has how many sharps or flats? Has 5 sharps. Okay, one of those sharps is D sharp, right? So that means B to D sharp is a major third. We have B to D natural. D natural is a half step lower. That makes your interval a half step smaller than major. That makes it a minor third. Okay, this is a minor third. Now you just, like I said, to get that octave in, you do +7, and that gives you a minor 10. Okay, cool. So last thing I want to talk about, inverting intervals. Let's go over here. Yeah, okay, I'll do this. I'll clear this out. So inverting intervals. Fancy name for something very simple. So you're just taking the 2 notes in your interval and flipping them. So let's start with a really simple, easy interval. So like this one to this one. Okay. So I'll give you a second, figure out that interval. C to E, so major third. Okay. So if I were to invert that, all I'd do is flip the 2 notes. So we'd still have an E and a C, but you'd have the E on the bottom and the C on top. Or something like this. See what I mean? So it's still a C and an E, but they switched places. Now the C's on the top, E's on the bottom. Okay, let's find the quality of this. So, and the quantity. So the quantity E, F, G, A, B, C, and some kind of a sixth. Quality, all right, think about E major. E major has how many sharps or flats? 4 sharps, okay? What are those 4 sharps? F sharp, C sharp. Well, I can stop right there. C is sharp, right? So that means E to C sharp would be a major sixth, right? So C natural, that makes it a half step lower, which makes your interval a half step smaller. So instead of major, this would be a minor sixth. Okay, so that's how you invert. And there is a pattern to this. So perfect intervals invert to perfect intervals. Major intervals, and we just saw this right there, invert to minor intervals. And augmented intervals invert to diminished intervals. Okay, so there's your little pattern. Another little pattern. So the 2 intervals, the 2 numbers always add up to 9. So 2 inverts, so one, a unison inverts to an octave, a second inverts to a seventh, a third inverts to a sixth, a fourth inverts to a fifth, and that's it. Right? So that means you can just use that to not even have to figure it out. So a major third, okay, major inverts to minor, so it's going to be minor. Third inverts to sixth, so you know it's going to be a minor sixth. You can do it really quick that way. So here is a use for inverting intervals. So one thing you might want to do is write an interval below this note, right? Instead of writing an interval above, right? So if I have a note here, so we have, no, let's do a different note. Let's do this. And we want to write a, doing sort of tricky, maybe a diminished fifth below. Okay. So one thing you can do to write a diminished fifth below is to write an inversion of that interval above and then flip it. So what is the inversion of a diminished fifth? Okay, diminished becomes augmented and fifth becomes fourth. So an augmented fourth above. Okay, so let's just do that. Let's start on B, and let's write an augmented fourth. So let's get the 4 part first. B, C, D, E. Okay, so we've got B to E. B major has how many sharps? I think we just did this one, 5, right? Is E sharp? No, E is actually natural in B major. So that means B to E is a perfect fourth. So we've got a perfect fourth. We want to make it augmented. So we need to make it a half step bigger, right? So that E needs to become an E sharp. Okay, so now all I got to do is flip it. I'm going to take my E sharp, put it on the bottom. And then sharp that. And there you go. You have a diminished fifth below your interval. Okay, cool. That is probably good for today. I'll do something like this about triads tomorrow. Hopefully, if very latest, absolute latest, if I'm too sick tomorrow, I'll do it on Friday. But I'm really, really going to try to get that to you tomorrow. So I'll see you soon. Have a fantastic rest of your week and take care.